Welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm your host, Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 20. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. Gloria Beadle, thank you so much for your generous donation. If you would like to donate to the podcast, there are now donation buttons on the website, desertladydiaries.com. I do the podcast for free, but donations help defray some of the costs, like the website, the podcast host, and space required on platforms like SoundCloud, which keeps the podcast accessible to everyone. This week, my guest is Marge Doyle. After visiting the desert for recreation, then to help friends renovate their home, she worked her way to the low desert to live and work, and eventually to the high desert, also to live and work. After years as a nurse and health administrator, she's decided her visionary leadership skills would now be best used to serve as her community's representative to Congress. Hi, and welcome back to Desert Lady Diaries. Today, my guest is Marge Doyle, and guess what? She's running for Congress. She's a lifelong public servant, a nurse, healthcare leader, and elected official on the Morongo Basin Healthcare District Board. And when the hospital was near closing in 2013, she and her team were able to save it, the jobs and the economy. Now she's running for Congress to save healthcare and jobs in our district and country. I am honored to have you here.
Oh, Dawn, it's great to meet you and great to be with you.
Great. Thank you so much. So, before we get to all this exciting stuff about taking some responsibility on behalf of us, tell me about your first encounter with the desert.
Oh, wow. I've been coming to the desert since I was in my early 20s, so most of my adult life.
Okay.
For meetings, for pleasure, for a variety of things. As a lifelong Californian, I'm born and bred, and, this is one of the places you come to play. So, I've been doing that. But it took me until the 90s to actually move here. That happened as a result of friends. I came out every weekend to help them renovate their house.
That's a good friend.
Yeah, they were lovely friends. So at that point, we bonded over that, and I ended up moving to the lower desert for a job, as well as to be close to my friends. And in 2005, I moved yet again to the high desert, again for a job, and to be with my friend Jackie Combs, who was the then CNO, Chief Nursing Officer at High Desert Medical Center. I came as the Director of Nursing. Loved it. Love the peace and tranquility that we have here. There is just nothing better. I was in the mountains yesterday, and they were telling me that one of their friends was camping in Joshua Tree, and I said, it's a little slice of heaven.
Yeah, for sure. It's beautiful here. Yeah, I fell in love immediately. We talked before I started recording. So it sounds like when you came here, I have had some interviews where, or like me, I moved here knowing no one and had to make my community. But it sounds to me like you had a little bit of community here because of your friends that you were helping work on houses.
Yeah.
And also through work. So would you say that that's pretty much how you established your friendships?
When I moved to the high desert, the only one I knew was Jackie.
Oh, okay.
And of course, the hospital and my relationships with folks that I worked with, were on staff, or the doctors, the staff members, the nurses, the housekeepers, everybody.
Yeah. Right.
Those were my initial contacts. And then, of course, you do things. I'm part of Kiwanis, and so I've got that group as well. I'm treasurer for them. And Relay for Life, I'm a cancer survivor. So that's another group. And then I've done a lot of community theater, primarily up here, and so I have a theater community as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to work together sometime. I do a bit at the High Desert Cultural Center.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
so I've worked there.
We'll have to work on that.
All right.
That's super cool. Coming here and talking about that peace and tranquility, do you find yourself isolated at all sometimes, self-imposed for stress reasons, or...
I only use that piece as a respite from my very busy life. So I wouldn't necessarily call it isolation. I would call it kind of rejuvenation.
Okay.
But yes, some folks do struggle with that, and I do know that we've got, for instance, one of the things that the healthcare district has done is a recent survey about what's going on in our community, a health-related survey, and it was pretty shocking to me that 44% of the people in our district, our healthcare district, struggle with depression every day.
Wow.
So those statistics are higher than the county and higher than the state. And so one of the things that we've done is open a behavioral health unit over at Airway to help with that. It's a small thing, but and it certainly doesn't fill all of the need, but it's a start.
Yeah. And that's through Morongo Basin Healthcare
District, yes.
How are you at all related with the county facility that's being put right up here on Sunburst?
Yeah.
No, I get
on the highway.
Confused. On the highway. Right, exactly.
We are not actually involved with that at all.
Okay.
It would be nice to have some collaboration, and in fact, I have a meeting with Supervisor Ramos next month, beginning of next month, to talk about things.
Okay.
So try to do a little bit more collaboration on the local as well as the county and the state level.
Right.
I think that makes good sense for our community.
Well, and I think it just makes sense because there's so much legislation that is an issue. And until that gets fixed, really, it is what it is right now. We can do what we can to stopgap measures, but the legislation is needing some work.
Yes, that's key.
How do you spend most of your time then, outside of the work situation?
Well, I do have a full-time job in addition. I am the vice president for operations and clinical services for Primoris Healthcare out of Orange County, and what we do is we open HIV clinics across the country.
Oh, wow.
My first one is down in Palm Springs, and we're very proud of the work we do. It's very important work for a segment of our community that struggles with that disease. So really happy to be part of that. And
Congratulations.
I got a great boss, and it's a really good thing to be doing. So I do that, and I do campaigning, and frankly, right now, there's not much time left in the day besides doing my work for the healthcare district, very important, and my Kiwanis outreach.
Right, gotcha.
So,
Tell me what inspired you to put yourself out there and run for Congress.
Wow. Well, I have to start back a little bit farther in my history to really kind of tell you what brought me to this point.
Sure.
It starts when I was 16, actually. We do to 16-year-olds, I think, somewhat of a disservice, because we say at 16, you need to decide your entire future career and path today. And 16-year-olds are not well equipped to do that developmentally. And I used to be a peds nurse, so I know all about that, that stuff.
Right.
At the time, all I knew was that I struggled with what I was going to do. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, but at the time there was a glut of teachers. And I didn't think I could be a nurse because I didn't think I could do that. I thought the things that nurses had to do would be too troubling to me. And I had a beloved aunt, my Aunt Helen, who was pretty much the only outside our nuclear family member that was local to us. And she had been diagnosed with cancer, and she became very ill during that period of time in my life. And when I got my bright, shiny new driver's license, my job became to transport my mother, who didn't drive, and family members back and forth from our home in then Cucamonga to the Hospital of the Good Samaritan in Los Angeles.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And so, I learned to drive, and I learned to drive on the freeways, and I was good. But as my aunt became sicker, she would occasionally be released from the hospital and come home to us for care. And I learned to do a variety of things that I never thought I could do. Taking care of my aunt, giving her injections, all kinds of things at 16. And I did it not because I thought, oh boy, I'm going to do this, but actually because I just love my aunt so much. And so the first few weeks of my senior year, I got a call from home while I was at school, and my aunt passed away. That was a pretty difficult time for me. Grief and all that stuff was...
Right. Well, and as involved as you were in her care.
Of course. Right. And so I struggled with the grief, and out of that process came my decision to become a nurse and to dedicate that to my aunt. So my whole life has been kind of built on the homage to my Aunt Helen.
Yeah.
You know. And so I became a nurse, and at every level, early in my career, within the first 3 years, people identified leadership qualities in me and made me a supervisor, and then made me a director, and now I'm a vice president. At every step, I wanted to honor my aunt. And 3 years ago not 3 years ago, more like 4 years ago, when the hospital was in jeopardy of closing, I had been the director of nursing there for 7 years. And I knew that closing that hospital would result in people having to travel great distances for care. On the way, they might lose their life. Certainly, their health would be impeded, and the 600 jobs that were represented would go away, and that would devastate our economy. It was at that point that I made another Aunt Helen decision and said, I got to do something about this. I have the skill set, I have the knowledge, and I just can't let this happen to my community.
Right.
So I ran for the healthcare district. I actually was the highest vote getter of anyone, which was kind of surprising because all I did was just walk around and talk to people, go to meetings and go to events and things like that and talk to people. I did that. We were able to save the hospital, the jobs, the economy, and the healthcare district has been able to expand services to our community, and we went
which in turn creates more jobs.
Absolutely. Right. And we've gone from being nearly bankrupt to being extraordinarily financially secure. We got $14 million in the bank. And it hasn't been just me, it's been our team. But I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for the community. I think it's been a very positive impact. When things started to be talked about with regard to national health changes, I went and made an appointment with our current representative, Paul Cook. I gave him a plan. This was prior to any of the legislation that was put forward. I gave him a plan that would help fix the gaps in the ACA and a way to finance that. When the congressional bill was put forward, Paul Cook's staff called me the night before the vote and asked me to analyze the bill, which I was delighted to do, delighted to be asked about that.
Sure. Probably could have used a little more time.
Well, no, but it was okay. I was up to it.
Okay.
And so I did. I did a point-by-point analysis of the bill. And there were some good things in the bill, and there were some bad things in the bill. But my overall analysis was, and this was prior to the CBO analysis, that it didn't cover more people, and it didn't save any money. So I suggested he voted no. He voted yes.
And that's not the only time he's done that.
Well, I'm specifically talking about healthcare.
Understood.
Here. And, I'm not here to bash him, but that really disappointed me, and I let him know that.
Sure.
I saw him a few weeks later at an event, and I said, I'm still mad at you about that vote. And he said to me something that kind of shocked me. He said, it doesn't matter. The Senate will fix it. And I was shocked by that. I was aghast by that.
Kind of passing the buck sort of thing, too.
If his vote doesn't matter, then why is he voting? And so I said, this man is not representing the interests of my constituents in the healthcare district, and nor is he representing the wider district. So at that point, I began to think about it and think about, others that might run as well, encouraged other people to think about it, because I just think it's time for a change. People are really scared, and it's not a good thing for somebody to have to think, should I get my illness taken care of, or should I go bankrupt?
Yeah.
There are almost 5 million people in this country that have gone bankrupt related to medical care.
Wow.
It's just not right.
No. And it's so random.
And we're better than that.
Yeah.
We deserve more than that. So there are ways to do it and not bankrupt us.
Right.
And because I've been doing healthcare since I was 16, so that's a few years.
Right. Just a few.
A few decades, actually. Because of that, and because I've done all kinds of different things in healthcare, I really understand the complexities of healthcare finance and how things work internally, from the hospital setting to the doctor's office setting to the company setting. And so I think I have a skill set to help, and I think it's timely. And that's why I'm running.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to play a clip for you. This is the first time I'm doing this in the podcast, so we're going to see. I tested it earlier, and I think it'll work. And I just want to get your reaction to it on the backside. It's not specifically related to healthcare, but it is specific to just the situation we are essentially in our country right now. And the clip is from Michael Moore's movie, Where to Invade Next. I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
So I'm going to play a little clip.
And healthcare. It's not communism. It's just a good society. You play more solo. I'm taking care of myself and my family, and the rest I don't care about. But we are more like a big group, and we try to take care of each other within that group.
Right. You structure yourself with we in mind, and we structure ourselves with me in mind.
It's the women. A lot of women.
It's women, right?
It's our DNA. Yeah. I'm convinced. It's my conviction. As my belief in women. Capacity and the intelligence of women. If the world can be saved, it will be women that do that. And they do not do it with war. They do it with words.
So what do you think of that? They're from Iceland, those three ladies, and then of course that's Angela Merkel. What do you take away from that, and how does that play into why you are running?
As Americans, we are into rugged individualism. And particularly in the West, we've got that kind of
cowboy, pioneer.
Exactly. and particularly in our area, we have that. And much of that is good. Pull yourself up with your bootstraps and so forth. But one of the things I know is that we need community. And we need to help one another. And if you see how our area works, we have folks that help out. The Kiwanis help out. Rotary helps out. The cities help out.
This Unity Home.
The Unity Home. We've got so many places that help individuals. And we couldn't exist without that. I do think we're stronger when we see ourselves as a we. Normally we do, as evidenced by everything that I just talked about. I'm not running for me. It's not an ego game for me. I see myself as a public servant trying to make things better for my community. And that is really what's most important here. I try to listen. Every time I have a group, I say, what's the one thing you need me to do when I get to Congress? And they tell me.
Good. Yeah. Well, I think because, I've known you just from the amount of time that we're recording this right now, and I can tell that you're very passionate, you're very genuine, you're easy to talk to, and that, we have a congressman right now who is calling some of his constituents fringe, and that he doesn't want to meet with them and doesn't want to kind of face the music. So I can see why people would be comfortable telling you, yes, please run, I will support you, and let's fix what we can fix.
Yeah. We have to come together and fix what's wrong. In politics right now, people are at opposite ends of the spectrum and they're not willing to talk with one another.
Right.
We've got to be able to talk with one another to get fixes to what we currently have. We get nowhere by holding fast to our positions without seeing some good in either side and moving ahead. And so that's what I've learned to do with my work with my colleagues on the board of the Morongo Basin Healthcare District. It's what I've always done on a professional level, and so it's an easy skill set for me. There's no reason to have an us and them, because we're all in this together.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have someone who can kind of set the tone in the room, if you will, and manage the room to let everyone have their say, but has the vision to kind of point out where the similarities are or be more specific about what it is that someone likes, they may not like. The program may not be the problem, say the administration of the program may be a problem, but somebody who can step back and kind of separate those things out, articulate that so people understand it. I had a conversation today with someone who used to be a journalist, the news media. I mean, I would really appreciate less witty repartee and more educational concepts being shared so everyone in this country could understand at a base level what's happening with all these different things and be able to intelligently and critically think about them and then move on a decision. But it's just seems to be just all about ratings, advertisers, money, and not really getting the word out in a truthful, factual way so that people then can make decisions.
I agree. We used to have, when I was younger, equal time, the fairness doctrine, and that went away, and I think that has led us into a period where we're more and more polarized based upon whether we watch Fox News or MSNBC or whatever it is we watch to gain our news from. And again, we're better when we sit down face to face and say, okay, this is a problem, how do you see it? How do I see it? Where are our common areas?
Right, what do we agree on?
What can we agree on, and how can we move forward for the greater good?
Right. Nobody wants to concede. We're all about winning and being number one and not really including everyone, as it were.
Yeah. Not being a servant, but being a politician. And I hate that word because I've been, I don't see myself as a politician. I'm somebody that wants to make things better for our community. I'm a public servant.
Why do you think that more people with, say, your skill set and your outlook don't run for office?
I don't know. I think that's changing. I'm hearing more and more that it's changing, and events that I've gone to say to me that it's changing. I know I'm not the only one. I think that's a good thing.
Right.
So
perhaps this will inspire some people to also run in different areas.
I particularly encourage women. We tend to be able to sit down and talk with one another as you and I are. Not that men aren't great too. But this podcast is about women, so I thought I'd throw that one out.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, off the topic of politics, and I know you said you don't really have much time between the campaigning and all that kind of stuff. Any good TV, any movies you've seen recently that were awesome, books?
I'm reading a book that a friend gave me, and I do about 2 to 4 pages a night because that's about as much as I can manage as I'm falling asleep. But it's called The Boy's Tale, and it's a medieval convent mystery kind of thing, which is very unique, and I've never read anything like it before. But thank you, Phil Spinelli, for getting it to me. It helps me get my rest. I have a guilty pleasure in reruns of Bones because I really enjoy that, the clinical piece, and it's humorous as well. So.
This is the time in the podcast when I typically ask my guests to pick a question from my 17-year-old niece. She's asking about life in general. Okay. But I would say that someone with your experience in life probably can come up with some great tips for girls that are just starting life, kind of like you're, at 16, how do you know what you want to do? So looking back, what are some things that maybe you wish you'd known, at 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there, that you wish you had either done or known more about?
I think I would encourage her to be kind to herself. Because at 20, that's pretty hard. You're coming right out of teenage years where it's all about how you look and what happens and your portrayal to the external world. But be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Love yourself. And do what you can to be confident in what you do and love what you do. If I had known that back when I was 20, I would have been a dynamo. But it took me a few years to learn that.
I think it takes us all a few years to learn that sometimes. Yeah. And it, depending on how you grew up, what kind of environment that was, and then what you find yourself doing with your life, if you've been like led into something. I envy these younger ones who I'm going to be this, I'm going to do this, and they're doing it. It's amazing that you know yourself that well at that age. I wish that was me. Right. But, we each have our own path, as we know. So,
how is she doing, by the way?
She's in high school. She's doing great.
Oh, wonderful.
She's doing great. Wonderful. She's looking at, I think she's going to go into some social work. She's done some some volunteering with Habitat for Humanity and things like that. But I think she's looking at social work, looking at, I think, Virginia Tech and a couple of other places. So
great.
Yeah, so she's getting ready. She's studying, for her SATs is coming up and all that stuff. So one of the reasons I started this podcast was initially my idea a couple of years ago was to have a blog where I would espouse my own life experience, maybe help some people not make mistakes or stumbles that they might be walking into, although sometimes those are necessary to make us who we are. And everything was built and ready to go, and I never launched it. And then I moved here, and I think it was just at the beginning of the summer here, I thought, first of all, I'm meeting so many fantastic women with so many talents and so much passion, doing so many interesting things. And I thought, wow, this would be a really great way, not only for us all locally to know each other as a community of women, but I see this eventually morphing into a little bit more than that. So thank you for your wisdom and for your service to this point. We have some information about where you can read about Marge. MargeDoyleForCongress.com is the website, and these will all be in the show notes and on the blog post on our website. At Twitter, she's Marge, 4 Congress. She's also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and if you go to crowdpac, crowdpac.com, you can find her there and donate to her campaign fund. The election is?
The primary is in June.
Okay.
And as you know, in California, we have the top 2 vote getters out of that who run for the general, which will be next November.
Gotcha.
So
you got plenty of time to ramp up.
It will go by very quickly.
Sure.
And I just encourage folks to not be discouraged, get registered to vote, become informed, and then definitely come out to vote both in June and November, no matter who you vote for.
Right, exactly. And, if you're so inclined, get involved. Here in the Morongo Basin, we have an Indivisible group that does many different things. They have a lot of teams to make phone calls to representatives, write letters to representatives, attend local meetings to affect change. So if you feel like you want to do something, that's a great way to get involved as well. So check out indivisible.org and find the organization that's near you. I know you're so busy, so thank you so much for coming here today.
My pleasure. It's delightful to meet you.
Great. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. There are so many ways you could spend your time, so thank you for spending it here with us. I hope you got some insight and inspiration, and if you did, I hope you'll share that with me and the other listeners on the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. If there was something you want to follow up on, you'll find that in the show notes. Last week, I told you about the untimely death of Desert Lady Melanie Buck. Her episode was number 12. Our desert community came together on Sunday at the Landers Community Center to honor her memory, share stories, and just hug each other. Many came to honor Melanie and provide support to her husband, Paul, baby Joe Claude, and Melanie and Paul's families. A GoFundMe was created to provide infant care to 6-week-old Joe for at least the next 6 months. If you'd like to contribute, the campaign can be found on GoFundMe.com, and it's named Emergency Infant Care Fund for Joe. Or you can just Google GoFundMe Melanie Buck, MELANIEBUCK, and you'll find that campaign there. And with the holidays fast approaching, this will be the last podcast of 2017. I'll be back with more Desert Ladies on January 9th. Until then, be good to yourself. Take some time to reflect on the goodness that was. Dream of the joy to come. Hold each other close and get ready for a bright new year. Enjoy the season, and thank you so much for listening.